Life in the medieval world moved at a pace that feels almost impossible to compare to the speed of modern life. Even imagining waking up in that distant time is enough to make most people realize how deeply unprepared they would be for the reality of it. The sun rising was your alarm, whether or not you felt rested. The cold of dawn seeped into every corner of a home built mostly of timber, stone, or packed earth. You would have slept on a straw mattress, if you were fortunate, and the smell of the straw mixing with the smoke from last night's fire would greet you before your eyes even opened. There were no windows that sealed shut and no heaters to warm the room. The walls breathed with the outside world, letting drafts slip in as naturally as light. For people who lived then, this was nothing unusual. For someone from the modern world, the chill alone would be enough to make the day seem very long before it even began. The ache that followed sleep was also part of daily life, because work in medieval times almost always demanded physical effort. There were no microwaves, no grocery stores, no taps for instant drinking water. Everything needed to be gathered, carried, built, repaired, or prepared by hand. Water might require a walk to a nearby stream or a communal well, and carrying it back meant hauling the entire day's supply at once. The weight of it would dig into your arms, reminding you every few seconds that water, something you barely think about now, had to be earned. Even breakfast wasn't guaranteed, because food didn't simply wait in a refrigerator. Bread required grain, grinding, dough, and a fire. Milk depended on animals that had to be fed, sheltered, and protected. Eggs came from hens that could stop laying for weeks at a time. Nothing was effortless. As the morning continued, the air of the medieval world carried sounds far different from the hum of traffic or the buzz of electronics. Instead, you would hear animals, carts rolling over uneven roads, blacksmith hammers rising and falling, and the chatter of people beginning another day much like the one before it. Time didn't move in clean hours and minutes. Instead, it stretched in wide, undefined spaces shaped by work, weather, and responsibility. Many people spent their entire day just ensuring they could make it through the next one. What often surprises people imagining this world is that the rhythms of medieval life were both deeply repetitive and deeply unpredictable. Anything could go wrong, and there were far fewer ways to prevent or fix it. A small injury could become dangerous. A simple illness could keep you bedridden for days without medicine. A fire that started in one home could spread quickly, because buildings were so close together and often made of wood. People lived always aware of how fragile their safety truly was, even if they rarely spoke about it. Food, something we take for granted today, shaped almost every aspect of the medieval day. A poor harvest or a bad storm could change an entire year. Most meals were simple: coarse bread, pottage made from grains or vegetables, and whatever else the season allowed. Meat was rare for ordinary people. Spices, which today sit casually in kitchen cabinets, were so expensive that possessing them was a sign of wealth. Salt itself was valuable enough to be traded. A modern person, used to endless choices and easy indulgences, would struggle with the monotony, the limited flavors, and the scarcity. Hunger was not dramatic or sudden, it was a quiet, familiar companion. The work that filled the daylight hours varied depending on where you lived. Farmers rose early and spent much of the day in fields, using tools that required strength and endurance. Craftsmen shaped wood, metal, or leather with methods passed down through generations. Women spent their days managing households, cooking, weaving, and caring for children. Tasks were endless, repetitive, and often done with tools far less efficient than anything available today. Yet this work held the community together. Everyone had a role, and every role mattered. Traveling was another challenge entirely. The smooth roads of modern cities didn't exist. Instead, roads were often muddy, uneven, and unpredictable. Walking was the most common way to travel, and long journeys could take days or even weeks. Horses were valuable and not easily owned by ordinary families. Nights spent away from home meant relying on inns that varied wildly in comfort. Someone from modern times used to vehicles, maps, and streetlights would find the uncertainty overwhelming. Even moving from one village to another could feel like entering a different world entirely. One of the most striking differences between medieval life and modern life can be found in the simple concept of cleanliness. Bathing was infrequent for many people, and water used for washing was often cold and unpleasant. Clothes were worn repeatedly, repaired often, and replaced rarely. The smell of smoke from cooking fires and hearths clung to everything. Streets could be dirty, especially in crowded towns, and waste was not handled in the organized ways modern sanitation provides. For people of that era, these conditions were its own version of normal. For someone from our time, it would feel like a constant discomfort. Nightfall brought its own challenges. Without electricity, darkness settled heavily across homes and streets. Lanterns and candles provided light, but they were precious and had to be used carefully. Most people simply went to sleep not long after sunset, because staying awake required resources that weren't worth wasting. The world became quiet and still, and the cold deepened. Many people slept in the same room, sometimes even in the same bed, not out of choice but necessity. The sounds of breathing, shifting, and whispering filled the space. Privacy was not something most people expected or even fully understood. Despite the hardships, life in medieval times was not without its gentler moments. People formed strong communities, bonded by shared struggles and routines. Stories were told by firelight, songs carried through village gatherings, and festivals brought rare moments of joy. The slow pace of life allowed people to notice small changes in weather, crops, and seasons. They lived with nature far more closely than modern life allows. Families often stayed together for generations, and knowing one's neighbors was not optional, it was essential. Still, imagining surviving even a single day in that world highlights how much comfort modern life provides. Heating, clean water, medicine, transportation, communication, and food security, all these things shape daily existence without requiring you to think about them. In medieval times, none were guaranteed. A modern person, even a strong and adaptable one, would feel the weight of that uncertainty immediately. It was a world where survival depended on constant awareness, constant labor, and constant acceptance of limitations that feel unimaginable today. Beyond the medieval era, history is full of other challenging periods where life moved differently from the present. The centuries that followed brought their own struggles, plagues that spread through cities, wars that reshaped continents, and societal shifts that demanded difficult adjustments. Even the simplest tasks, writing a letter, preserving food, building a shelter, required skills that have faded over time. Looking back, it becomes clear that the comforts we now consider basic were once luxuries beyond imagination. Understanding these earlier worlds can be strangely calming. They remind us of how far humanity has come, how much knowledge has been built, and how many challenges were overcome long before any of us existed. They turn the overwhelming pace of modern life into something smaller and more manageable. Compared to the uncertainty of the past, today holds a sense of stability, even on days when everything feels chaotic. In the quiet spaces of history, where people lived slow, repetitive, careful lives, there is a kind of gentle rhythm that can lull the mind. Imagining the soft crackle of a hearth, the distant sound of animals settling for the night, or the simplicity of a world without constant noise allows the mind to drift. And in that drifting, there is rest. The stories of the past, even with all their difficulties, offer a landscape where thoughts soften, distractions fade, and the world becomes quiet enough for sleep.